folks, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the next video in this series where I read and review all the books that have won the Booker Prize in its history. The prize was first awarded in 1969 and I've been going through the list and reading all the books that have been published in the order in which they were published and trying to do a review in that order as well, so I can share the experience and what I've learned about reading these books in order, what kind of issues they deal with. I want to share that with you here on the channel. It's one of my goals this year to read and review all the books, and I've been making slow but steady progress. So thank you for being here to share this experience of reading and discussing this book with me. I hope you'll leave me a comment down below if you've read the book as well and you want to talk to me about it, or if something I talk about in this video today piques your interest and you want to hear a little bit more. I'd be happy to discuss more about the book that I didn't say or don't say in this video. So stay tuned for my discussion of the 1972 winner G by John Berger. In the description box down below, I'll leave a link to the playlist where I've added all the previous videos that I've made where I've discussed the books that have won the prize up to this point. So if you are new to my channel, if you're new to this series and you'd like to hear me discuss all the books that have won the prize before this one, then go ahead and click the link down below and you'll be able to pick up the playlist and watch all those previous videos. The author John Berger is probably better known in literary circles as being an art critic, and in this novel he integrates his two passions, his two great loves, which are probably writing and art, and the novel is rendered in kind of a whirling mass of flickers and strokes and layers of meaning and visual images, some of which emerge into the foreground and some of which simply exist to form a textured background, perhaps the way a modern painting would be created. The protagonist of this novel is simply named G, and he's a product of an extramarital affair between an Italian merchant named Umberto and a younger woman named Laura, who herself is married, but she has abandoned her husband and is looking for adventure. And the two, Laura and Umberto, carry on an affair for several years before that affair produces a child, and it is on the arrival of their child that both seek to find their different ways. Umberto wants to tie Laura down. He wants her to move to the city where he lives so he can have regular visitations with his child, but she is unwilling to do that because, number one, she doesn't want to be like his wife. She doesn't want to be constantly available to him. But in moving away from her child's father, she also seeks a different life, and instead of going off to raise her child by herself, she simply takes him to a farm so he can be raised by two of her cousins, and she seems to go off to pursue some political interests. The fact that G is raised on this farm, he grows up with a very hypersexualized awareness of relationships between animals, the farm animals that he sees, but he also expresses and indulges these fantasies in his relations with other people, especially older women. From the age of 5, G is having sexual fantasies about his governess, and as he gets older, these older women also take advantage of him, and so he grows up in this very hypersexualized environment where from very young, in almost abusive situations, he's able to indulge those thoughts and fantasies. So this becomes a book where G, in trying to express himself and in exerting his manhood, confuses some of that power with sexual power, and a lot of this book becomes him expressing and exerting his dominion in relationships through his sexual identity. In his early teens, G's mother returns to claim him and brings him back to Italy to meet his father. And while this is kind of an erstwhile family reunion, it is interrupted by scenes of some kind of a resistance in Italy. And so this becomes the lead-in to the discussion of G's other life, what he will become as a man. So first we saw his beginnings, we met his parents and even his father's wife, and we get to see how he was created and all the people who contributed to his education, whether unwillingly or not. And then we get to see how G turns out. And a big part of the discussion I think that the author wants the readers to have is to have some psychological discussion about nature versus nurture. But to move away from simply a psychological discussion, this is also a very political book. The fact that we don't know G's name, G becomes a symbol for lots of other people, a lot of other political figures that appear throughout this book. Most notably Garibaldi, who was one of the heroes who's credited with unifying Italy in the late 1800s. And this is also the period in which this book is set. It's in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. And so as G becomes a young man and travels the world, the people with whom he has interactions, whether they're women, married women with whom he has affairs, or his cousin with whom he has some kind of an incestuous relationship, through his connections with women, he's also touching the women's husbands or the men in their lives. And each one of these men seems to have some political alliance, and so G becomes almost the hub for the network by which we can trace a lot of the political rumblings around the world. And so while G moves from England to Italy and moves around Europe, his sphere of influence is that much greater. And even in a relationship that he has with his cousin, the cousin's husband was a soldier stationed in South Africa. And so we get an introduction to the Amaxosa tragedy and how the natives were oppressed by the settlers who had come in and wanted to dominate them. As well as he meets Bosnians around the time of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So he is also on the periphery of the beginnings of World War I. Later, G visits the Alps to witness one of his pilot friends attempting to scale the mountain. Yet, while the aviator is on his quest to scale the mountain, G is having a dalliance with a young woman in the hotel room, so he actually misses the event. And G's conquests are compared with this pilot's more heroic acts. And yet, the effect of the comparison and the contrast between what these two men are doing at the same time gives us an opportunity to show how different people try to conquer the world and to try to accomplish almost impossible feats in different ways. The novel's format is unique in that it's not the simple unfolding of one character's life, nor is it an allegory where you can point to one place in history that the novel is alluding to. In fact, the main character's movements and the interactions that he has as he traverses the globe seems to suggest that this story is a universal one. The storytelling technique is a challenging one to follow because of the meandering path that it takes, where it establishes links and returns later to connect them with other later parts of G's life. The artistic rendering of this story reflects the style of Italian master painters like Caravaggio and Titian, whose names and works are mentioned in this novel. Caravaggio being an artist who worked in chiaroscuro, and his use of alternating shadow and light really reflects what we get from the attitudes and actions of this main character. But also the versatile painter Titian, who emphasized his paintings of nudes with bold colors and loose brush strokes, so that his paintings experimented with subject and format and technique, much like we see with this protagonist and the way he lived his life in the pages of this novel. And so while we see this main character G encompassing a lot of those artistic characteristics, we also get a historical reference because of his comparison to Garibaldi, who was one of the heroes credited with uniting Italy. And G, in his meandering around the globe and his interactions, even when there are sexual dalliances, he does encounter people from all over the world and has an influence on a lot of political issues. As a composite of all these various elements of art and history, the novel is pedantic and scholarly interesting. As a discussion of G's origins and his family structure and how his gene pool and his environment may have affected how he behaved in his later life, the novel also provides fodder for a really interesting philosophical and psychological discussion. But it also has this very hyper-sexualized awareness in the background, so it's also a kind of titillating read. And so I encourage anyone to read this book if you think that you'd be interested in any of those elements. And before I wrap this video up, I must comment on the cover. There are 3 alternate versions that I have seen and want to discuss right here. This, of course, is the edition that I read, and the picture here is of a young boy who's presented in a nude painting, and this is a work done by Caravaggio, who I mentioned earlier. This other picture that I'll insert here is of a nude woman. Then, of course, there's the cover that is probably the most conservative representation, where it's just the large initial G. All 3 covers could be fully representative of the novel in its entirety and not just one particular phase, because here we have this young boy who We know that his experiences as a young child impacted and influenced who he became and his worldview. And also, because of the color blocking on that cover, it also shows the impact that G had as he moved around the world. And then of course we have the nude woman, who this becomes a representative of how he sees the world, something to be admired, something to be conquered. And then of course we have G, who is the universal representative, the fact that a lot of the alternate heroes in this book also have the first name G, and so G could be their initial as well. And so our protagonist in this novel could be a representative, could be an allegory for any of those heroes or villains. So I find all three covers to be very interesting. I haven't bought my own copy of this book yet. This is a copy that I read from the library, so I'd be interested to hear which of these covers appeal to you most. As a more conservative reader, I'm a little hesitant to get the edition where the nude woman is represented on the cover, but this is not much better. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the cover and on the discussion of the book. Again, this is a 1972 winner of the Booker Prize, G by John Berger. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. Check out the playlist, watch other videos that I have discussed, other winners of the Booker Prize. More reviews will be coming soon. My plan is to read and review all these books during the rest of this year. So thanks for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's talk in the comments. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.